Stronger or weaker? You choose. Friends, if the heaviest thing that you have lifted lately is your iPhone, then this episode is absolutely for you. Today we are talking all about strength. So let me ask you this. Over the last 10, maybe 20 years, would you think you have got physically stronger or have you got weaker? Let's be really honest. For most of us, the answer is weaker. And the one thing about strength, it doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away quietly. One day you're opening jars without thinking, and the next you're handing them off to someone who's stronger, or buying one of those little grippy jar opener things. Are you kidding me? One day you see muscle definition, the next it's gone. It's replaced by something else. It was no big moment. It was no alarm bell. It just disappeared. And because this is so common, we have accepted this as a natural part of aging. But today, we want to change that. Here she is. We are talking to the fabulous Dr. Stacy Sims. Stacy, it is a joy and a pleasure to have you with us today.
I'm excited, especially since we're talking about strength. I can just imagine the little can opener thing that you're talking about.
Hey, we've all had one at one point, and that was
I'm sure.
probably a turning point for me. I went, no, this isn't how it has to be. So we're going to challenge our thinking and I guess remind everyone that it is a choice to be strong or whether to be weak. And
It
we
is.
have to choose that every single day.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I was like, I think I might be stronger now than I was 10 years ago.
You look it.
Okay.
You look incredibly powerful, whether you did look like that 10 years ago or the fact that you haven't lost that in 10 years as we get older. That's quite a feat
Mhm.
in itself, isn't it?
It is definitely because I feel like I talk to so many women who say, I feel like I woke up squishy overnight. I was like, well, there's a precipitous change, but it didn't happen overnight.
Time moves fast and we do lose track of these things. And many of us who were probably incredibly fit or skinny fat in our youth have now woken up and gone, hold on, it's just not enough. And when I was reading that introduction, it reminded me that there's probably no one in our immediate circle that is tapping us on the shoulder saying, you must stay strong. You know, we hear you must stay fit, you must stay flexible, you must keep moving. But the word strong has never really come into play until you came along.
Yeah. I know. I think it's interesting the way that we've all grown up in the whole women shouldn't be lifting weights. If so, we're doing it for toning. And from a physiological perspective, I keep going, well, how does that help us when we have to live independently?
Mhm.
And how does that help us when we are trying to help our older parents and other people? So, like in our 40s onwards, if we're just looking for that quote pink dumbbell tone, it doesn't really get after a muscle centric component of how we need to age.
Mhm. So, shall we be, I guess, changing that trajectory? We want to become stronger. So let's set the scene, meet our listeners where they are. And for most people, they're walkers. They
Yeah.
might be doing some Pilates. They might be doing some yoga, easy jogging. They've got amazing sets of activewear available to them. They're busy, but are they really doing anything? And I guess we all have this sort of sense of fear or guilt that we're not really doing enough. But then we see a gym and we see people who are lifting weights, and it's frightening. It's scary. So, oh, A, it's going to take me forever to get into that kind of shape, or B, I don't want to get muscly. And I think you'll be the first to say, takes a lot of effort to look this good.
Takes a lot of effort to build muscle. Yeah, so I always like to take it back to what are we worried about when we get older, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, we see uh, older women who have a portrayal in social media and general media of what, people look like, where it's a little bit of a dowager's hump. And, so they're hunched over. They can't carry their groceries. They might be walking with a cane. You might see more female figures in television programs and stuff that are older who are in assisted living, who might have dementia or Alzheimer's. And those are all just really pushed on us. But when I talk to a normal everyday women, I'm like, well, how do we want to age? It's like,
Mhm.
I know I've always said and keep saying, I want to be doing Zimmer frame races with all of my friends where we're all very cognitively aware and strong enough to get up. And maybe we need assistance with the Zimmer frame, but we're all having fun when we're 100. So if we bring it back to the first and foremost is our brain, because our brain is what really helps us keep going, to be cognitively aware, sharp, being the old woman at the table with the cards who's like a card shark. And it comes with being able to really accentuate and keep challenging the brain.
Mhm.
If we look at something like walking, running, even if you're running up a hill, trail running, if you are doing Pilates, none of that is really challenging neural pathways of the brain because we're thinking it's just a linear motion for the most part. Or with Pilates, it's really good isometric and control and coordination. That's good, but it's not what we're after to really enhance our body's cognitive abilities and reduce Alzheimer's and dementia risks. We need to look at lifting weights. And as I say, lifting weights, again, I'm moving away from the 2 kilo or the 5 kilo dumbbells, where I want women to really embrace what it means to do compound movements. So that would be a deadlift or a barbell squat or something like that. And it's a learned skill. So anyone listening, I'm not saying you have to do this right away. But when we start getting to more complex motor patterns, like a compound movement of a deadlift or a squat, then we are really challenging our central nervous system, which
Mhm.
means that we increase the neuroplasticity of the brain. So we're increasing the neural transit. We're looking at how the nerves are connecting to the brain, the signaling, and all of this goes to reduce dementia and Alzheimer risks. So we see the sex difference in aging, where there's a more of a female predisposition to Alzheimer's, predisposition to dementia. Part of it's a sociocultural construct where women haven't been pushed into more challenging situations during their life,
Mhm.
and we have not been encouraged to push hard in exercise unless we are competitive athletes.
Mhm.
So when we bring it back down to how are we going to have an aging population that is aging well and not getting old and being put in assisted care, I bring it back down to the basic, like, what do we need? We need to be muscle centric. So if you're walking by the gym, you're like, that's not for me. I want people to take a pause and say, wait, yeah, I need to challenge my brain. Maybe this is for me. But how do I get in there? Because walking into a gym is very scary.
Mhm.
And I say that because there are some gyms that I go into, and I've been in gyms since I was 16. So going into a few gyms, and I feel that, like, it's a bit unsettling for me. So I can't imagine really how unsettling and off putting it is for a woman who has no background in it
Mhm.
to walk into a gym and say, okay, now what do I do? So
Mhm.
we always have to take it back and say, where are we right now? Are you active and what kind of activity are you doing? Let's see how we can add some load. And that could be we're starting with body weight stuff. And then we can progress from there.
Imagine this: unlocking your genetic blueprint with insights from over 200 healthy aging genes, pinpointing your unique SNPs and potential red flags, understanding what your body needs to thrive and where it may need some extra support. No more guesswork, no more random supplements, one off blood tests, or one size fits all advice. For the first time in history, we have access to the power of genetic testing, something no generation before us has had. This information could change everything. Join our free DNA webinar and you'll get our Stay Well scorecard jam packed with the markers that we want you to track every year, starting now. Friends, know your genes, own your health. Let's learn to thrive together. Visit theagingproject.com to register, and I'll see you there. Okay, there was two big aha moments there for me. One, lifting heavy weights is good for your brain health.
Yes,
Bottom line.
absolutely. Bottom line. Yep.
We don't have a choice. If we want to age well, lifting weights is something we just have to do.
Yes,
But we don't have to
exactly.
start heavy,
Nope.
particularly. But a gym, as you say, is a great place to do that because all the resources are there for us. I've been doing some research, and here in Australia, there's some great programs. A lot of gyms do have senior classes, and that doesn't mean you have to be 70, 80, 90. You can start that when you're 40, if you like, if that's what you are. And that is all about maybe 3 exercises that you can go to, and then that's not so intimidating. Or the stronger, longer classes. I think gyms are really starting to understand that here is a great market for them, revenue, to get older
Yes.
people into gyms. And maybe, as you say, they've realized that these places can be quite intimidating for people who've perhaps never done it before, as yourself, have done it forever and still find it a bit burly to walk in there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it can be just like in the States, we have the YMCA, which is like your local community center. And like in New Zealand, you have some of the government tech areas where you have a swimming pool and a gym associated. So it's very low barrier to entry. And if you're going and you're like, I have no idea where to even start, bring a friend. And maybe you guys are doing air squats together, maybe some push ups on the wall together, just to get feeling what it's like to be in a gym.
Mhm.
But even some women who don't have access to a gym and they're like, I really don't have the funds to join a gym, then there are lots of applications from online sources that you can do that you start with body weight and then build into kettlebells or dumbbells or putting stuff in a backpack for extra load. The whole idea is push pull press against a load that is more than body weight, because we have created an environment globally for the most part that is just not conducive to a human body, where we are constantly in the same kind of temperature, the same kind of environment. We have access to food whenever, and we have access to water whenever. So our body's really not cued into what we really need. And then when you're thinking about being uncomfortable, which is what lifting can be, we don't put ourselves into that situation because we have globally created an environment that doesn't allow us to be uncomfortable. So taking that step out of your comfort zone into a gym or into strength training is one way to challenge the whole body, nervous system, everything, but it's also a way to not only for brain health and build those connections for brain health, but we're looking for better metabolic control, because if you're building muscle, you're building more active tissue. It helps you with blood sugar control. It helps with additional conversation between the skeletal muscle and your liver to stop or reduce the storage of body fat, specifically visceral fat. There's so many benefits other than what you can look like when you lift weights that people just don't talk about. And we need to push it out there.
Well, that's it too. As I mentioned, very hard to bulk up, to get big. And I know that can sometimes be a hurdle for women. I don't want to look like a bodybuilder, but really that takes an amazing amount of effort and time. So it's not going to
So,
happen overnight,
no.
and it's not going to happen to the average person unless they love it so much. And I can see the addiction kicks in for so many people that they love feeling strong and feeling good, that they might end up going that way. And that is awesome. For
Yes.
those who haven't come across you before, and I find that hard to believe, but you are an exercise physiologist, nutrition scientist. You specialize in female specific health, performance, longevity. It must be frustrating for you to see, I guess, this drop off of young girls who were perhaps very, very sporty in their youth and were doing amazing things. And when they sort of hit puberty, things start to change. And we can blame that on society if we like. But there's obviously a physical shift that happens in women's bodies too. And sport isn't quite as comfortable as it was. Do you see where that drop off is? Or is it more in our 20s and 30s when we get busy?
Oh, no, it's definitely in. Sorry,
That's okay.
rubbish truck. No, it's definitely in the, I'd say between 10 and 14, we see a massive drop off. Um, I see it particularly well because one, I live across the street from a primary school, and two, my daughter is 12. So I hear about it and I see it. But when we're looking at actually what is happening at the onset of puberty, it starts earlier than what we think about. We see girls who are starting their period between 13 14 years old, it starts when they're 8. And you start to see this shift on the playground where girls are no longer fighting in there to play rugby or soccer with the boys. They might be on the monkey bars, but now they're like really pulling back in their physical play. Um, and it is a lot to do with the way that their bodies are changing, where we see an increase in limb growth a lot
Mhm.
faster than the core. And so we have a little bit of a disconnect and feeling a bit ungangly. We see a widening of the hips and a widening of the shoulders. So things like being on the monkey bars and being able to do pull ups just for fun becomes really, really hard because their center of gravity has changed, their limb length has changed. They're starting to put on more body fat. They're also becoming very socially aware of what they look like because there's so much comparison going on.
Mhm.
No one wants to be different. Then, when you put girls in school uniforms, there is a significant drop off in the want for free activity just in the breaks because they're in skirts or uncomfortable clothing. Or if they're allowed to be physically active, they have to change into their PE gear and they don't want to be in the bathrooms changing because a lot of stuff happens in the bathroom. So there's a lot of that cultural thing around it as well as the physiological. And that physiological and cultural build into mental shifts as well. Plus, we have the brain and the development of the brain and the moods and everything that comes with the shifts. That it is really, really hard for girls to understand that physical activity can help them through all of this because they haven't gotten that information. And then the stuff that they are given is directly given to them from a male perspective. So if we're talking about a team environment, we see that boys like to really be out there in front and really driving one on one and have that aggression. And we see this in a lot of the younger boys that are out there playing. For girls, they don't want to be singled out. They don't want to be doing kick drills by themselves. They want to be together because, again, they're very super conscious that there are people watching them and
Mhm.
they don't want to stick out because they don't feel comfortable in their own bodies and everybody's maturing in a different rate.
Mhm.
So it becomes something that we have to be ultra aware of so that we can moderate and change the way that we are coaching or approaching girls with physical activity
Mhm.
to encourage them that this is a really good thing to be doing and it's a welcoming space.
And that's it. If it's been 30, 40, 50 years since we felt that idea of free play, it's a long way back for a lot of us. You know, we
It
do
is.
see young girls playing. We're like, I remember when I used to do that. And maybe no one ever explained, or I absolutely know no one ever explained it's because my limbs were getting longer and my shoulders were getting weaker and my hips were getting wider. You just thought you'd lost your mojo, really.
Yeah, exactly.
There was that extreme, you know, couple of girls in the grade that went on to do incredible things, and good for them for pushing through. But for most of us, it's been a long time since we've felt, I guess, even aware of what's going on in our own bodies besides our cycles and our pregnancies and now perimenopause. We're learning all
Yes.
about that.
Oh, yes,
Um,
yes.
and you're saying if we can get our heads together and work on our strength, it's also going to help all of these things and perhaps, you know, resolve a lot for us along the way.
Yeah, and I see a lot of women who are perimenopausal who pick up strength training and their girls are, 10, 11 years old. They also are like, "Oh, that's cool. That's something new," because they're not quite at the age where mom isn't cool. They're like, "Mom's still cool." So when women pick it up, then their girls pick it up. And it's a cool vibe to see the younger girls lifting and understanding how to move and learning the same time as their moms are. And then they actually go lift together or have a timeout together and they talk about it. It's I shouldn't say it's a rarity. It is a rarity in the global sense, but I'm finding it more and more in little pockets. And it's really cool to see.
So imagine doing this. Imagine taking your daughter and your mum to the gym with you.
Yeah, I
And if
know.
anyone's going to be intimidated by three power women walking into a room and having some fun along the way, if you can't find those friends or that group to do it with, perhaps, yeah, your daughter or your mum is a great place to start.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
Let's play a little true or false here when we're talking strength. Okay. After 50, women lose muscle twice as fast as men thanks to hormonal changes. Is this true or false?
False.
Oh, okay.
I
Please
know.
explain.
I know. So this is a thing that's going around where we're talking just about hormones and we're not looking at the auspiciousness of actual aging. So we can't really separate aging from hormonal shifts. So we're seeing a decrease in lean mass, but it's not a direct ability to compare men to women.
Mhm,
Because what's happening as we hit perimenopause is we are becoming more and more uncomfortable in our bodies, and we might not be sleeping as much. So we don't move as much. And because we're not moving as much or we're not exercising as much, we start to lose our muscle mass.
mhm,
In conjunction with hormones that also accelerate some of the strength loss. But when we look at mitigating it, so if we have a woman who is going through perimenopause but doesn't stop moving as much as some of her peer group and still has the hormonal shifts, she doesn't lose muscle mass as rapidly. So this is an area that is in contention right now because everyone's like, it's just because of estrogen we're losing our lean mass.
mhm,
It's not. There's an aging factor and there's a hormonal factor. It's also testosterone, progesterone that can drive changes as well. So if we're thinking about someone who's having a whole bunch of hormonal shifts and they go on MHT and they have progesterone, testosterone, and estradiol, the progesterone, testosterone will encourage more muscle strength than the estradiol component.
mhm,
So there's a miscommunication about what estradiol can do for strength and strength development. We know inherently from an endogenous or a normal natural production of estrogen, it is tightly tied to how strong a muscle contraction is, how fast that contraction is, and the ability to build lean mass.
mhm.
When we are looking at external intake of estradiol, it doesn't do the same thing. So there is a little bit of a misstep in the communication of what's happening in perimenopause and losing muscle mass. So if we were to even it out and say, yep, okay, we are still moving the same and we are having a hormonal change, we see that women do lose muscle mass at a much faster rate than men, but it's not twice as much as men lose.
Okay, so women again that may have been working out and keeping fit and doing strength training in their 20s and 30s, they themselves can't be doing the same type of training once
No,
they reach that perimenopausal age. They're going to have a shift as well.
they definitely will. Yeah, for sure. Because when we're looking at what people are really doing in their 20s and 30s, for the most part, they're still training according to the protocols that have been done on male data.
Mhm,
So we see a lot of people are going to failure, or they're doing high reps, or they're doing more of a metabolic type exercise where we're looking at 4 or 5 sets of 8 to 10 reps and using lighter weights because they don't want to necessarily fail, and all of this is more what I say a metabolic cost. So we
mhm,
are looking at tearing muscle fibers and trying to instigate the repair of them to get bulkier, not bulk up, but get bulkier fibers so that it
mhm,
looks like we have more tone. When we get older, we don't have the same kind of responses to that kind of training.
mhm,
We have more of a resistance and what we call an anabolic resistance to that kind of training. And we have more of an anabolic resistance to protein intake, which we know is really important for building muscle.
mhm,
So when we get into perimenopause, we need to find a stronger kind of stress to put on the body that is going to signal adaptations to create a stronger contraction, to create a faster contraction, and to also build muscle. So this is where we have to look at more of the power-based type training, where we're looking that 0 to 6 rep range, lots of periodization within there. So if I'm saying 0 to 6 reps, that means when you get to the sixth rep, you might be able to eke out 2 more with really good form, but you don't. You're like, I got to 6, my form is really great. I might
mhm.
be able to do 2 more, but I'm going to stop. So this is how we're looking at how we're loading. So we say around 80% of a 1 rep max. And there's lots of ways of varying that. So you're not always doing 5 by 5 or 5 by 3.
Mhm.
But what this does is it creates more of a nervous system response, where now the brain is saying, hey, we need to be able to create an environment where we can conduct that nerve a lot faster to jump over and stimulate these muscle fibers to contract rapidly and hold a very strong bond to have a very strong contraction. And we also need more muscle fiber itself to be able to lift this load. So we have a different signaling, and this is how we have to look at lifting as we move forward, because we won't have our natural estrogen production that will initially create that when we're in our younger years.
Gut health is a topic that many of our guests, like Dr. Frank Lipman and Catherine Maslin, have mentioned in the past, which is why we have a range of products we've researched over at youmusttryit.com. We encourage you to be proactive about your gut health and let us help you resolve any ongoing issues. You can also book a health coaching appointment over at youmusttryit.com. Just go to health coaching to learn more. Okay, so one of your catch cries, I guess, one of the greatest lines that we know you for is women are not small men.
Yes.
And that's where it comes into this idea that we do need to do completely different types of training than our male counterparts.
Yes.
And obviously, as we get older now, we need to do a completely different type of training that we did as younger women. But is Shelley the same as Amanda? Can we generalize that women should be doing this type of training? Is there a body type difference? If you've never been in the gym before and you're starting out from scratch, do we go straight to this lift to
No.
failure? No.
No, we don't. Like I said earlier, it's a learned skill. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're looking at someone who's just starting their strength training journey, I want them to be able to move well. We
Mm-hmm.
want them to know knee alignment over toe for squats. How deep can they go in a squat or not? What kind of impingement or shoulder issues might they have so they don't have full range of motion? And we want to be able to work on that before we start adding heavy load.
Mm-hmm.
So it could take 6 months, it could take a year before you actually get into lifting heavy properly. I mean, it can take up to 2 years to learn how to lift a heavy 3 properly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a training block, it is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And some people pick it up really quickly. Maybe they have a history in strength training. Maybe they are really mobile and they have lots of flexibility. Now they have to learn how to be strong in those flexible movements. So each person is individual
Mm-hmm.
to when they can start at actually lifting heavy. So in the earlier time period of the journey, we are looking at higher rep range,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still going to get some benefit. But as we start getting older and more robust in our strength training and our strength training history, that's when we start challenging and adding load, because we don't want people to get injured, right? Because if you get injured, that's the very first thing that's going to stop you from ever wanting to do strength training again.
Mm-hmm. And then you are out the window, aren't you?
Yeah.
So it sounds like, yes, you need guidance. I guess we can learn as much as we can from apps or programs or what we find on the net. A personal trainer sounds like a great place to start.
You can, or you can even work with a physio. If
Mm-hmm.
you get a movement assessment with a physio, then they'll be able to, they're trained to look at body movement and trained to look at where some of the imbalances are and the sticky points are. Personal trainers are more about, let's put you under load and get you going. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're really hesitant and you have muscle imbalance or knee issues or joint issues, work with a physio first. And it could just be a one-off with the physio and they film you and give you notes. And then you can go and then you find a personal trainer who understands how your body's moving and then can work with you from there. But if all of that is out of depth and out of scope, there are some strength training coaches like Sunny Webster who will have a Zoom with you and film you and talk to you and talk you through the movements. So it is accessible. It's just knowing where to look.
Okay. And if you just typed into your web browser, lifting weights for older people, is there anything that you would find there that was cheap, easy, free?
Yeah, that they tend to fall into the old people using a chair to sit to stand and not really resistance training. Um, you can go to the National Strength and Conditioning Association, NSCA. It's an American site, but they do have resources for starting to lift and learn to lift. And you can find personal trainers that are registered through there to be able, and it's global registration. And then there are examples of how to lift if you are older and if you have joint issues and that kind
Mhm.
of stuff.
Okay, so the sit to stand we're talking about is literally getting yourself out of a chair without using your hands. And that's all about obviously your strength, balance, mobility, leading to longevity. Hopefully, yes, we can all do that, but maybe just an easy thing to start with. What about the grip test? I've heard that that's really good to sort of test your muscle strength and function. Is that another one that you could do at home to say, "Hey, am I ready for this yet?"
Yeah, I think the ideal grip test to see if you are strong enough is being able to hold on to 75% of your body weight in two dumbbells and carry it for a minute.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a tough one. But if you're like, I can't even hold on to 75% of my body weight, then you know that you need to work on your grip strength.
Mhm. Is that shopping bags? Do they count?
Could be. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Getting
Anything
them
that you
from
have
the
to
car to the
grip and
kitchen bench, there's about
yeah,
a minute, yeah?
yeah, hold on to it. Yes, exactly.
Let's go back to another true or false. Muscle loss, aka sarcopenia, means muscle can literally turn to fat.
It means that there's more fat stored within the muscle, but muscle cannot actively be turned into fat.
Okay. So when we're going to the gym and we're lifting, the idea is to burn fat, use fat as a fuel. How do we prepare our bodies for that so it doesn't then burn the muscle that we're trying to build as women?
Yeah, eat food.
Okay.
I know. Most people are in the whole idea of fasted training because they're like, if I am training fasted or I don't have any food before I go do exercise, then I'm going to end up burning more calories and I'm going to end up in a calorie deficit.
Mhm.
When we look at the data on women, this is not true.
Mhm.
When we look and see when women go in, especially to a strength or a high intensity interval session, if we have just 15 grams of protein beforehand, then what happens is our body is like, okay, there's fuel here. And we see that it also translates to post exercise where our metabolism stays more elevated for a longer period of time
Right.
and we don't perturb our appetite hormones. Because if we do a training session or exercise fasted, then it signals to our brain that we are under a lot of stress. And the area in the brain that's perceiving that is also responsible for our appetite hormones. So we see what happens is after exercise, we tend to be more tired because the brain is like we're under stress. So we don't move as much during the day and we are hungrier during the day for simple carbohydrates
Mhm.
because of it's pretty much a survival mechanism. So if we go into a gym situation with some food on board, none of that post exercise negative stuff happens. We end up with a positive after effect where we have growth hormone, we have testosterone that comes up that dampens cortisol. Our hypothalamus is happy that there's food on board. We end up with better appetite control and we end up eating less throughout the day because we don't have the signal to the brain that we're really tired. So we don't have the craving for simple carbohydrate.
Wow. So the female body needs fuel before
Yes.
exercise.
Yes.
And that means we're not going to be as hungry post exercise. Because I
Correct.
know if you fast leading into exercise, you eat all day after that, don't you?
I
You're saying
know.
that's a reaction to the fact that we didn't eat prior to the workout.
Exactly. So all these people who are perpetually in a fasted state, and you'll hear this, we'll get backlash for this from the podcast, but I've been fasting forever. It's
Mhm.
like black coffee doesn't work. And if you are drinking coffee after training and you're filling your stomach with fluid, you're not going to feel hungry.
Mhm.
But from a reality standpoint, I like to say, I really want to see a DEXA. because what we're seeing a lot in women who are 40 plus, especially women who are fasting, is they do have sarcopenia and their bones are like chalk.
Mhm.
Even though on the outside they look super fit, they might even have muscle tone, but that does not mean that they have a really viable internal look at what's happening with body composition.
Okay, let's go to the DEXA scan because this is something that they're not easy to find, but when you do have one and you get one, it tells an incredible story about, I guess it is percentage of fat over muscle and where that fat is sitting within your body. Is that right?
Yes, yes, definitely. So when we're looking at a DEXA, it's a total body scan,
Hmm.
and it gives you bone density. So it
Hmm.
tells you on your whole lumbar, your hips, your forearm, everything, where you might have really fantastic bone density, which is the hope, or where you might have a low bone density. Then we also see our lean mass from a muscle and water standpoint. And we can see if there is really good quality muscle, skeletal muscle. And we can also see, which is really important, visceral fat.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of women who look, like I said earlier, they look super fit on the outside. And then we see they have a very high percentage of visceral fat. And this is not eating enough and exercising and trying to compensate within that diet culture that we've all grown up in. So we need to eat more. Most people are like, but I eat, 15 to 2,000 calories a day. If you're an active woman, you need to eat more than that. We want a higher precedence of protein. Protein is just now hitting in vogue on the conversation
Hmm.
because if we are eating more protein, then we are able to have quality muscle. And if we have quality muscle, then we also see a decrease in visceral fat.
Hmm.
So it's a win-win. And we also need protein for bone development.
Okay, we are very big on breakfast here at the Aging
Yay!
Project. We have talked about flipping our meals, of having
Yay!
our traditional dinners for breakfast. So we're talking meats, we're talking eggs, we're talking avos. Get it
Nice.
all in there first. Pre-workout, and I know you've spoken a lot about this. It's hard if you're waking up earlier than the family and you're trying to get all your stuff done before life kicks off or the day kicks off. Sitting down to steak and eggs is kind of
No,
tricky.
not
You don't have
ideal.
to do that.
Right, you don't have to do that. You have that after your session.
Hmm.
But I think I'm notorious for talking about my protein coffee, which I find really funny because people ask me what I do before I
Hmm.
go training first thing in the morning because I don't necessarily have an appetite early in the morning. But I am very much a coffee snob and I love coffee. And I make it the night before and I stir in 30 grams of protein with some almond milk, and it's my protein latte before I go.
Beautiful. So it's
Super
ultimately
easy.
a couple of scoops of protein, which is your 15 grams,
Yeah.
in with a couple of shots of espresso.
But you need to stir the protein powder into something cold, and then you put your espresso in and chill it overnight. Or you could put the espresso in the morning. But if you put protein powder into something hot, it gets very gluggy and gross.
Understand. That's not going to appeal to anybody. But
No.
that's enough. You don't have to
Yeah,
have the big meat brekkie. You can
right.
have that. Let's talk protein then. I know there's whey protein, which is obviously from cows.
Yep.
And then you've got plant protein.
Mhm.
Do you have a preference? Is there a difference? Is it a vegan thing?
Um, it's an individual preference, but if we're looking at quality of protein,
Mhm.
if we're measuring plant proteins against whey isolate, which is one of the top tier wheys, then pea protein isolate is almost the same. It's just a little bit shy of leucine, but it's still high enough to invoke the
Mhm.
changes that we need. If we're looking at rice protein or soy protein, we have to look at almost twice as much. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy when we're talking about protein powders.
Mhm.
When we're talking about overall protein intake, it doesn't matter as long as you're getting your total protein intake that you need in a day from a whole wide variety of sources.
Okay, so pre-workout, 15 grams is enough, which is a couple of scoops. Sorry. So pre-workout, we're talking 15 grams of protein, which is enough. And that's a couple of scoops of either pea protein, you're saying is excellent if you're vegan, or your whey isolate if you're happy to eat whatever.
Yeah.
Then how much protein should a woman be eating in a day?
We try to benchmark active women at 2 grams per kilogram of body weight a day. And most people are like, whoa, that's a lot of
Mhm.
protein. But when you start getting out of the typical mindset of all animal based products, and we
Mhm.
start thinking about edamame and green peas and nuts and seeds and beans, and every time you have an eating opportunity, you're having protein and fiber. And the protein and fiber could be your green peas, or it could be fish with salad, or you're having some kind of protein and fiber. You end up hitting all of what you need for protein, and you're also getting that higher fiber intake that helps with our gut microbiome as well.
Mhm. So we're counting protein now instead of calories. I like
Exactly.
this.
Yes.
I got another true or false for you. Women can lose up to 20% of their bone density in the first 5 to 7 years after menopause.
True. True. We see
Okay.
up to a third of their bone mass over the first 5 years of menopause. So yes, that is about 20%.
So
A bit
this
more.
is what happens when we choose to do nothing.
Right. And we don't choose to do osteogenic type exercises. So I hear people go, well, I go for a run. I'm like, that's not enough.
Mhm.
I am doing Pilates or yoga. No, that's not enough. What we're looking at is a multi-directional hard force through the entire skeletal system.
Mhm.
And we also have to look at increasing vitamin D intake. And I know that we are both in winter, and I don't know about you guys, but we've had rain for 2 weeks now. So we are not seeing the sunshine. And in the summer, we've all been predisposed to put on sunscreen. So vitamin D3 is a very viable and very safe supplement to take to help with bone
Mhm.
and jump training. So we can do strength training and jump training. And jump training isn't what we're thinking about plyometrics and box jumps. It's just a very, very low depth jump. So you might jump maybe 5 or 6 centimeters off the floor and land hard. So we're not landing with soft knees. We're landing to absorb that impact.
Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
okay. One of our favorites here, Dr. Vonda Wright, and one
Yes.
of the
I know
phrases
Vonda.
I love from Vonda is "bash your bones." So
Yes.
this is bashing your bones. So not bending your knee, not doing a safety jump. We're
No, no.
really wanting to jar our bodies.
Yes. Yes. And for some people who are like, "Oh, I can't do that because I have bad knees, I have bad hips," you can look at doing a plyo push-up against the wall. So you accelerate, and then when you land with stiff arms, because then you're gonna absorb all of that through your skeletal system, but you're not jamming into joints that are already sore.
Wow. Okay, that is a new one for me too. I was always being gentle on my knees. Not
Yeah.
so good. A question I've got for you is about VO2 max. We're really big on genetic testing here at the Aging Project. We have a wonderful program called Fit Genes where you can test a percentage of genes that can be, I guess, helped through wellness and good diet and exercise. We don't talk disease as such,
Mhm.
but we do talk about the genes that we can help. And one of the things that comes up in there is about your VO2 max, which is your maximal oxygen intake or uptake. What is it? What does it mean? And can I improve it at all?
Yeah. So when we are exercising at our top level and we're gasping for breath, what's happening is we're having an exchange of oxygen with carbon dioxide, and we need oxygen to come in to be able to fuel the muscle. So if we're thinking about the capacity to increase our threshold for that gasping, then that means that we have more oxygen coming in available for our working muscle.
Mhm.
It means we have more mitochondria, we have better mitochondrial proteins, better mitochondrial density, more metabolic flexibility in our fueling. So when we talk about VO2 max, we're seeing that those people who have a higher VO2 have a better outcome for longevity. And it is because they have a better working capacity for respiration. And that isn't just our breathing in and out, but it's also our cellular respiration.
Mhm.
And this is why we start seeing a measurement for our VO2 max as a measurement for longevity.
Mhm.
From a lab perspective and a research perspective, we always use it as a capacity for making sure that everyone is at the same fitness level. And when we disseminate it out to general pop, instead of telling people you need to get a really high VO2 max, I tell people we want to work on increasing our anaerobic capacity.
Mhm.
So that means being just at the red line, not being able to talk, hitting about 80%. Because if we're doing that, we are increasing our VO2, But more importantly, we're producing lactate. As women, we need to produce lactate because it's a very important fuel source for the brain. And we see that there is definitely a metabolic shift in the brain during perimenopause, which is also a risk factor for dementia and Alzheimer's. So if we're pushing in the upper range and we're doing some of the what other people say VO2 work, where you're top end, you're holding for 2 to 4 minutes and you're really pushing hard, then it's a twofold. One, you're increasing total respiratory ability from a cellular process all the way up to whole body. And by producing lactate, you are encouraging better brain metabolism, which reduces tau plaques and other things associated with Alzheimer's.
Amazing. So we have to get puffed.
Yes,
That's it.
that's
And
it.
you can. I never realized. I mean, obviously, going for a run, you're going to get puffed. And if you're walking with friends, that's great, but you shouldn't be able to have a conversation, as I
Right,
was saying.
right.
Right.
Interval training.
And you
Interval.
interval training.
Yeah.
And you've got a recipe for that as well that I know you've spoken about, this 30 seconds hard and then 2 minutes of rest.
Yeah. So there's a subset of high intensity interval training, which is sprint interval training, and that's your 30 seconds as hard as possible, and then 2 to 3 minutes recovery. The recovery is super long because we want your body to be at a capacity to go just as hard, if not harder, for the next 30-second interval.
Okay. So that doesn't have to be sprinting as such. It's called sprint training, but that could be star jumps. That could be push-ups, if
Kettlebell
you like, the
swings,
kettlebell swings,
battle ropes, arm,
the
yeah,
old
assault
whatever it is,
bike.
the assault bike. 30 seconds. I mean, you sit back here and you go, I could do anything for 30 seconds. But 30 seconds can
Hard.
be a really long
It
time.
is hard.
Yes.
And when you're like, oh, it's 28, don't stop. Go to the 30. You know,
Okay.
you have a really long recovery after that. And then by the time you get through it, you're like, oh, that was super easy. I can do it again. But if
And
you
then you do
can,
it again.
and you do it again. Most people can do 2 to 3 when they first start. But if you can do 5 to 8, then you're not doing it hard enough.
Okay. I'm all about multitasking. So I
Yeah.
would think just running on the spot for 30 seconds, I'm going to get puffed. But if you're saying if you're doing kettlebells as well, you're also lifting.
Yes.
So this is a great multitask, isn't it? If
And
you're doing, can you do weights for 30 seconds? But then you're obviously doing more reps than you would like to. So it's not
right.
a weight
Not
thing.
ideal.
It's a
It's not a
kettlebell thing.
weight thing, no. Kettlebell swings and battle ropes. Those are 2 really fantastic things, because if you're doing battle ropes, you're also absorbing that impact, which feeds back into bone. So if
Okay.
you're doing 30 seconds of really hard battle rope, you're working bone and that top end metabolic rate. So that's definitely multitasking.
All right. And for me, would I then do that on one day and then do weights on another? Or you can do this as your little VO2 max session and then do weights?
You could do weights and then finish. We call it a sprint finisher.
Okay. I like this. All
Mm.
right. So we're bashing our bones. We're also increasing our VO2 max. So that's a stronger heart and lungs. It's better
Mhm.
metabolic health. It's ultimately greater independence with age. And we're exercising our brain at the
Yes.
same time.
All of the things. That's a good multitask, isn't it? Right there.
That's hardcore. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it, actually. I'm kind of excited. I will be honest. I used to love the gym. I fell out of love for a little while. I've been back for about 6 to 8 months now, and I love it. But
Yay.
I've got great friends there, and there is an older crowd. So I found a good gym with an older crowd, and we all are inspired by each other. And there's some powerhouse women in their
Yes.
60s there that are
Yes.
just the ultimate inspiration for me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they know all this, and whether they were, active in their youth, I think a lot of them were, but they've kept it up, and now here they are to help us and to inspire us
I know,
more.
and community, right? You found
Yeah.
your community, which makes it so important because isolation is another mental health risk. So I find gym communities because I can't really find negative people in the gym when you're vibing with the same people, because everyone's like they're doing their thing. They're not under work stress at the moment.
Mhm.
They're getting an endorphin. They're working their bodies, and everyone just seems to be happy. If they start off grumpy, they don't end up that way.
It's really hard to have a bad day after
Yeah,
you've lifted some weights, isn't
exactly.
it?
It is.
We've all just got to get in and give it a go.
Right.
We've learned about protein today. Creatine is another hot topic at the
Yes.
moment, along with protein. Is this something that all women should be having at our age, or just women who are lifting should be having creatine? What is it? What do we need it for?
Everyone should be using it. We see that it is okay. I'll backtrack and say yes, everyone should be using it,
Mm,
especially women.
mhm.
We have around 70 or 80% of the stores of creatine that men have because one, we have less muscle mass, and two, we tend not to eat as much animal protein as men. And creatine is a very important part of our fast energetic process. So if we're thinking about that 0 to 30 seconds of really fast energy, and our brain is using it, our heart is using it, our gut, everything, eyesight, uh, I'd say pretty much everything, but maybe our toenails are using creatine. um, and it's so important. And we're finding more and more research coming out on the health benefits, especially for women. We see it is really important for mental health, for people who have depressive episodes. If they're taking creatine, it helps get them out of a depressive episode, even with using the traditional SRIs. We're seeing newer research that just came out in the past month that using up to 10 grams of creatine a day helps when you're in that really fatigued state of poor sleep and high stress. It helps support all the energy systems, including the brain. And again, when we're under a lot of high stress and low sleep, we have predisposition for cognitive changes. So
Mhm.
it's all about preserving the brain and helping support the brain. So creatine, very important. And you don't have to take it in and around training. You can take it any time of day.
Okay.
Um,
Can you put
w-
it in your protein coffee? Does it
you can.
mix well? It doesn't
Yeah.
really taste like anything. It's a little bit salty, isn't it? But it
Yeah.
doesn't really taste like
It
anything.
doesn't it yeah, there's no taste or anything. You wanna look for Crea Pure as the business to business brand, so any kind of creatine that you pick up at the shop, it should say Crea Pure or Crea Vitalis on it,
Mhm.
because this is a patented way of creating creatine with less to no side effects. Because some people will use a cheaper version and end up with bloating and nausea. Some people end up with headaches, and those are not side effects that are normal. So just look for a very pure type of creatine monohydrate.
Okay. And when you say everyone should be taking it, are we talking perimenopausal, menopausal women, or are we talking everybody? Husbands,
Um,
wives, kids?
I think men should be taking it too with today's ultra processed kind of, low, high quality food intake.
Mhm.
Crea Vitalis is the health brand, and there is a website called Creatine for Health. It has all the research that's been done on it. And there is more and more supporting that men, especially older men, should be using creatine not only for preserving muscle function, but also for brain and gut health.
Oh, incredible, Stacey. I'm so thrilled that we've had you here. I know that the conversation that we have had is going to make a lot of changes, a lot for people to digest,
Yes.
but the non-negotiables. So could we start, I guess, the Stacy Sims Aging Project 30-day strength challenge? Does this
Sure.
work? Yeah? Can we
Do
get
it.
our community involved with this? So we got
Yeah.
30 days. We've got to keep it simple. It's doable. It will meet you exactly where you are in your stage. What would be 4 simple things that people could do every day for the next 30 days to start on their journey to better health and longevity?
Okay. So if we're looking, we want some kind of movement.
Mhm.
So I always tell people, okay, you wake up, you have 10 minutes of quietness with no one else in the room, or you go outside and you can do some air squats and some push ups, some stretching, some mobilization for your first part of movement.
Mhm.
Um, we want to make sure that you have protein and fiber, and those would be the big non negotiables.
Mhm.
And you can layer on your own life. So if you're hitting strength training 3 times a week, and either you're just starting, so you're looking at 20 minutes of body weight movement, body weight exercises. If you are going to the gym, then you're looking at upping your weights over the course of the next 30 days. And if you are a regular gym goer, try to do a different type of periodization. So instead of just doing your typical Monday, Wednesday, Friday sets of 5 on push pulls, let's look at some French contrast training, which is a heavy lift with some plyometric built in. So you're mixing it up, but you're not changing how much time you are training.
Because it doesn't have to be hours, does it?
No, not at all. We're about quality now, not about volume.
No, we're about being able to open our own jars when we're 90.
Right.
That's it.
And
This
lining
is
up
a
for Zimmer
commitment.
frame races. Yes,
That the
commitment.
Zimmer frame race. I cannot wait.
Yes.
We're going to do that.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we
Totally.
are.
Yeah.
All right. This is your invitation to begin. It's time to start building some momentum along with your strength. It's a tiny daily investment, but it is going to make a huge change. So here it is. The Stacy Sims 30-day
30-day
challenge.
challenge. I love it.
This sounds great to me. Stacy, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. It has been extraordinary talking to you. I know that our audience is going to want to deep dive into you. So it's www.drstacysims.com. She has an amazing Instagram page. She's chatted on the Huberman Lab. She's chatted on the Diary of a CEO. You can hear her chatting to Mel Robbins about so many different topics. I'm glad we focused on strength today, but you are a wealth of knowledge that I know our audience is going to be desperate for more. So Stacy, thank you again. We're going to check back in with you, let you know how we're going.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
As always, the Aging Project podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. Always seek medical advice from a qualified practitioner.